Good afternoon. This is a little bit the issue. Deep sea mining is not a big hit. It doesn't draw the biggest crowds. But that's exactly the issue, actually. So my name is Markus Reymann. Behind me, you see Creatures from the Deep Sea. I'm the director of TBA 21 Academy, which is a department of Thyssen-Bornemisza Mr. Art Contemporary, a contemporary art collection and foundation based in Vienna. In 2012, we decided to create a program that is purely focused on the environment with a special highlight on the oceans, and that has become the TBA 21 Academy. It is not just artistic. It's really trying to bridge the gap between art, science, exploration, and conservation, and that is what, after a long time, brought us to deep sea mining. So I know I've seen a couple of familiar faces, so I know that a couple of you know about deep sea mining, but who else does know about deep sea mining? Please. What? Yeah, okay, so I'm preaching to the choir. That's a little bit the problem, so more or less there's not a lot to say, but I just tell you quickly how we got to this place and what we intend to do and why I think that an aesthetic dimension in this whole conversation is an important one, and an aesthetic and cultural one. A couple of years back, we found on the Mission Blue website. Mission Blue is an organization run by Sylvia Earle. Sylvia Earle has coined her deepness. You all probably know her. She's a legendary marine biologist. And on her website, Mission Blue, we found a post about the International Seabed Authority. Fantastic maps, very, very suspicious little office in Kingston. And we asked ourselves, why is a United Nations office, a United Nations body, hidden in downtown Kingston? And we, as an organization, we have a long-standing history with Kingston. We run a marine protected area in Kingston, a community-driven marine protected area. And the next time that we were in Kingston, we took an artist with us, Armin Linke, who you might know from projects from the Haus der Kulturen der Welt. And we went to the International Seabed Authority and had a little conversation with them. And it turns out that the International Seabed Authority, as I said, is a United Nations body. And they have this annual meeting, and they are tasked with the administration and the distribution of the resources on the seabed, which is common heritage of humankind in the high seas. So, we've understood relatively quickly that the organization itself is rather complicated in terms of that it's very closely tied between the policymakers and the mining industry. So far, deep sea mining is a fiction, right? It hasn't happened. It is yet to be proven that it can happen and that it can happen at a profit. So we're talking. The reality is that we're talking about mining at 4 to 5 kilometers deep in the ocean. We're talking about a soft layer, a very soft layer. So if we say the seabed, it's not a hard concrete layer where we can actually drive whatever kind of machines that you need, and you pick up the little nodules that we're all after. This is an extremely complicated mechanism that we're trying to tackle here. And this is also, it's an environment you have to imagine that has a sedimentation rate of 1 millimeter per square meter in a very, very slow time. And all of a sudden we're talking about picking up, dredging the ground, picking up the nodules, pumping it up to the surface, sieving out the minerals, and then dropping it back down. So you can imagine what this does to an environment that is hardly explored, where the sedimentation rate, as I said before, is bare minimum. And this is happening, or this is supposed to happen. So the question for us is, how do we engage with this, and why does an art organization should engage with this? We came to the conclusion that we should, and the way that we did it was that we applied as an observer to be an observer at the International Seabed Authority, and for whatever reason we were granted to be the we were granted the observer status. We're the first art organization ever to be an observer at the International Seabed Authority. And now we have the right to come and visit the annual meetings and intervene in these annual meetings. And I think here, when I went there last year, is exactly the possibility for an organization like ours to intervene. I was, let's say, at least surprised when I got there last year. I was there for 10 days. I attended all sessions. And I think the word ocean was mentioned twice. Usually we're talking about paragraph 154, should be would and not should, or should. It's all about terminologies, it's about paragraphs. It is not about the bigger picture. It is, and this is exactly where I think the artistic intervention becomes necessary, and not in terms of figurative intervention, where we say, okay, we make visible what is on the seabed, which I think is very important, because it is very much out of sight, out of mind, and everybody thinks that they can do whatever they want. But I think also in a descriptive way. In a way that there's also the possibility right now to change something in our behavior. So as I said before, this is an extremely difficult, extremely dangerous, and yet to be discovered what the impact actually might be is undertaking. But for some reason, the promise, the financial promise of deep sea mining is so big that against all better judgment, we're willing to take the risk of disturbing an environment and an ecosystem that we know nothing about, to an extent that it might be irreversible. And I think here is exactly the possibility for an art institution to elaborate the consequences, the mechanisms, and the responsibilities of this, because you must understand that the International Seabed Authority, the way it is not a desirable place to be. For any technocrat, bureaucrat, or scientist, it is usually something that you would rather pass through as quickly as possible. But you're the one that is asked to take the decisions on something that has major consequences for the health of the oceans. So, bearing this in mind, we, like I said, we went to the International Seabed Authority. We looked at the system there, and it is striking that next to the decision makers, you have members of the mining industry. So the intertwinement between policy and industry is there is hardly any barrier, and if there is a barrier, it's very it's very flexible. So. Why do we need to talk about this? Because I think the opportunity here is really to take a step back and to take a look at a couple of the larger questions that are connected to this. One is the common heritage of humankind. What does that mean? What does it mean for us? Right now, it just means that there is a reserve on minerals that will be taken at some point. That is the one thing. And the other thing is really, what is this urge that drives us to open up frontier after frontier after frontier after frontier? So, yeah, I think that's it for me. I think if you have any questions, please ask, but that would be it. No.
I think you are all experts here, or most of you, as I understand.
There's one question.
Ocean.
Hello, thank you. How did you manage to get that observer status, and what are you actually, you don't know yourself?
No,
and what are your possibilities apart from artworks to intervene?
Okay, there are two things. I think, how did we get the observer status? We applied, and we have a track record of you know, I mean, we started a marine protected area in Kingston. We had a marine protected area supporting system in Costa Rica. So there was a track record of these kind of interventions, even as an art organization. On the other hand, what are our possibilities? I think our possibility is to show up and to insert a certain kind of language that has no space there. And I think exactly the opening up of this cultural space, a descriptive space, but also the bigger picture, which is not confined by terminology, not confined by paragraphs, is the possibility that we have. And that's into the bureaucratic system of the International Seabed Authority. Outwards, it is really the communications platform that an art organization has.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Markus, for this inspiring talk. And I think it's also very nice that you refer to this common heritage of mankind principle that is really enshrined as a legal, sort of very rock-solid legal principle in the International Convention on the Law of the Sea. So saying that all these minerals belong to all of us. So it's our common heritage. But it's somewhere hidden and it's not very prominent in international politics. So how can art really help to bridge this gap between this really very remote political process on the one hand, and then on the other hand, or sort of we as human beings owning all this heritage out there, and what role can art play there, and what is your thoughts around that?
Well, I think when, as an art organization, the interesting point is to take even a step back and say, how come that the common heritage of mankind is the distribution and the administration of resources, you know, and these resources will be taken at some point. So why it seems that our common heritage has only the only thing it has to do with it is economics somehow, no? And I think this is the starting point for us as an art organization to elaborate on that, to create discourse around this idea. What can the common heritage be? And I think even a step further back is that you look at the law of the seas and what it was intended, and I think in its intention it was one of the most beautiful judicial ideas that ever happened. Where the result was compromise after compromise after compromise, and we have what we have. That's the one thing. The other thing is really that you can elaborate on so many different levels as an art organization. I think we all face the challenge of what is supposedly the attention span, no? That everything has to be 3 to 5 minutes. If it doesn't make the 1 minute mark, then it's like it's gone. Except in the art world. Funnily enough, if you go into a gallery, a film that can be super complex, it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be linear narrative. It can be very. Yeah, like I said, it can be very complex. It's no problem at all that you look at something for 20 to 45 minutes. And this is possible because it is in an art context. So I think this is the possibility that art has nowadays to elaborate, unfold, unpack these very complicated issues in ways that doesn't fit into 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 90 seconds.
Hi. I was wondering whether you think that this is also mappable onto the digital realm, because it strikes me in a metaphoric way that the way that the deep sea is accessible to you or to the art world or to anyone is very similar to the way that that the web or the large troves of infrastructure there are accessible to the public. Yeah. So the way that that you try to make certain aspects of accessibility of resources, of infrastructures, and their democratic or non-democratic accessibility visible is something that also happens in the digital realm in the way that only large corporations or national states with a certain status have access to it. So this, I think, is something that could also figure into the work of the academy, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think between the ocean and the digital realm, there's huge similarities. I mean, one is the unregulated space that it is. Both of them are. The other is really the kind of the platforms that take ownership of something, and then you have very similar. You have the relationship between a nation and a company that then take ownership of these resources that is supposedly for all of us. So this is the similarity there is nearly immediate. I think on the other hand, it also offers space for big collaborative efforts, for community-driven, for crowdsourced efforts. It hasn't been done yet, but theoretically there is nothing. There is nothing to keep us from getting together, putting together $500,000 or $750,000 to buy a stake in the seabed, on the seabed. We would have to apply through a country at the International Seabed Authority. We would have to prove that we can do research and that we would publish or share this research with the International Seabed Authority. But there's absolutely the opportunity to do so, and there's the opportunity to actually get ahead of the curve, and then you could open source all of this environmental impact research and all of that.
Or acquire a root server, for example.
Or that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions on this very special approach? I think.
No. Okay.
Take the chance. Come into exchange or. Okay.
Hi, my name is Alex. I must commit I'm not very familiar with all the organizational infrastructure and everything, but what I've understood is that now that you got the permission to attend these meetings, you mentioned that you got, so to say, a foot in the door. And what are your next steps? How do you plan to push this idea further? How do you go on from now?
Well, there's a number of strategies. There's the collaborative strategy. There are many organizations working on these topics. There are experts in the field, but usually working in singular models. It's like really the intent behind our approach is really to break down the boundaries between disciplines and be able to communicate across these disciplines and through to a wider audience. The possibility that we have now is there are a number of possibilities. So what I would really like to do is create and curate a series of artist interventions in the International Seabed Authority, because now we do have the possibility to have a speaking interventions in the General Assembly, and it would be fantastic if informed artists, like you will see later on the main stage, Trevor Paglen, for example, who knows a lot and understands these kind of complex issues, would give lecture performances in the General Assembly. This would be on our bill, and this is just to push like I said, the language. It's to push the understanding. That is the one thing. On the other side, there are the possibilities for side events. So this is what we're looking at today, or this year, is to have a large public interface between the International Seabed Authority and the public in Kingston that knows very, very little about the realities there. There's a European Union program in the Azores, Blue Atlantis, and we're doing a series of works with a group of artists called the Inhabitants on that, because I think both locally as in the European Union, it's very little known on this program. So it is twofold. It's between public advocacy and outreach and really within the institution.
I think we have some minutes left for final questions, if there are any. Or I'm sure everybody can meet you after.
I'm here.
After the next session, of course, because the next session is as well tackling the submarine issue and the deep sea and oceans. Okay.